just a little bit more. Make a few adjustments. I guess that'll work out all right. Well, hello. How's everybody doing? It's a Tuesday. I'm home a little early. So I figured I'm going to go through this Redshift from Chuckworks. Redshift conversion slash chassis for No Preg Drag. So as you can see, what we're dealing here is a basic SCT short course. Chuckworks RC, who did this chassis. I just happened upon his gear about 2 months ago. Was looking around the options of what was available in No Preg Drag Chassis that was Traxxas based. Kind of keep it simple, parts easy, accessible, that kind of thing. And this is one of the companies I came across, and I got looking at them and looking at the other options and cost-wise and everything else. And then history a little bit. Chuckworks has actually been around for a little while. He's more left coast based, but he just moved, I believe, to Idaho. I may be mistaken about that, but I want to say he went to Idaho, getting himself set up in Idaho and everything. But he was leaving California, and I guess I can't blame him there. Whoops, something I got to deal with. Yeah. So the Jackhorse chassis is a short course chassis conversion made for the Traxxas Slash base 2-wheel drive slash setups. And he's done quite a few different. He's got a race specific type chassis. I believe it's called the Slice, for a 2-wheel drive short course race truck, for short course rigs. He's got a conversion kit for a dirt modified, late model dirt modified, and then I call them midget racers. He's got a kit for a midget racer, a few other kits out there too. But this is his newest kit, which is a slight modification off, I understand, his Slash short course truck race kit, set up for no prep dragging. It's been slightly modified off the original Slice chassis. I think it is the A07 maybe. The Slice A07, I think, is what the rig is. This is the kit modified from that for the No Prep. And you can see it's a composite setup. It's not carbon fiber, as I understand it. It's a composite. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Chuck, I talked to him for a little while. He said it was his own mix he developed over the years. It's very stiff, very solid, nice composite. I've worked with a few composites in my life, rigs and pieces, and this is actually pretty good stuff. It's set to be a little stiffer than his race chassis for the 2-wheel drive Slash, in the terms of that's got a little bit more flex built into the rig and the chassis, short course and off-road. Little flex in the chassis can help your front end bite for turning, that kind of thing. And no prep dragging, you're really not turning, you're just shooting a straight line, and you want to keep everything fairly rigid with just minimal amount of minimum amount of flex in the right areas. And he's designed that into this chassis. So this is the one one of the ones I decided. I picked up two, and I'll go through that one on the other one on its other things. This is one of the chassis I decided to pick up and build. I was going to start a couple of videos to do a build video of it because they seem to be very unknown and that not too many people have videos of them out there at all. But I had some interruptions and wasn't able to get started with the build video without me getting interrupted without too long into it. So I just stopped, and then when I got sorted, I went ahead and just kind of threw it together and forgot about a video. But pretty much what you have here is the Chuckworks RC No Preg Drag. It's called the Redshift chassis, and I used a Traxxas Bandit, VXL Bandit actually, as the donor rig. As most of that other rest of it that didn't get used here will be going into other vehicles, and some of it already is. At any point, it's got a Bandit setup, so any two-wheel drive Traxxas Bandit, you can get the standard two-wheel drive setup for about $129 for the brushed version, the XL5 ESC, and the, I think it's the 21.5 turn or the 12.5, 13.5 turn brushed Traxxas can motor in there. But so it's a little bit cheaper, but I went ahead and got the VXL because I could use the brushless motor in ESC, which are pretty much already in other rigs now, other places. So the only thing off the Bandit I probably won't be using is going to be the body and the rear wing. I'll probably sell those in the radio system. And other than that, everything else in the Bandit will be getting used in multiple rigs. So basically, it's pretty much you take your front end off your Bandit, which is, you know, A-arms, bulkhead, shock tower, that kind of thing, and they will slip right up into here. You can kind of put it together and just slide it right into place with all on your bulkhead, and then hook your stuff up. It's not too bad. You just loosen a couple screws, and you should be able to slide that whole front end right in there. Take out these two screws in the top here. Take out these two screws. You know, the Traxxas has 3, but in this Redshift chassis from Chuckworks, he only put in 2, but there is a hole here in the bulkhead. But basically, you remove that entire bulkhead by these 2 screws and these 2 screws, and the whole front end will pop out. You have to undo your steering, of course, whether you do them here or out here at the tire. So you have to undo your steering. Servo, I use the Traxxas stock servo because you don't need much, and I'm not a fan of Traxxas electronics. Even the motors are pretty good. ESCs have gotten better, but they still aren't the greatest. Servos, I'll take a cheapie off Amazon pretty much usually. But it was in the Bandit. This is supposed to be a decent servo. I'm not going to be turning very much, so for turning around, hopefully. It hopefully won't take too much abuse and it will survive. If not, I'll be putting a reef in there and calling it done. And I probably already, made my mind up. I'll get a reef servo before too long, probably before the season starts next year, and have a reef servo in there instead, one of their high-speed servos. But the servo mounts right up here in front. It's set up for the battery tray. You take a full battery pack back here. I am running a shorty pack, and I'll probably get different shorty packs with higher C ratings. A lot of people always, go for the 6,000 milliamps, and in my opinion, you're doing short, quick, fast runs. You're sucking a little bit of juice out, but not too much, even when you're doing pass after pass. So I'm thinking about getting a couple not high MAH, but race pack, shorty race packs, 130 Cs or somewhere in there on the shorty side, but low MAH, so they're smaller, they're lighter, and I'll buy a couple of them and I'll keep one charged because it's easy. The way I've got it set up here, I've just got a foam back here and I can slide this thing right out and right in. It's real simple to swap the battery, and it's solid. I mean, that thing ain't going anywhere. I'm holding it by the battery. So it's pretty solid in there. Ain't slipping around at all. It's got a couple posts here in the large battery that you can slide a couple pieces on and lock it down. But I didn't get to that far yet and decided to use the shorty pack because it fits better, and in my opinion, it's easier to center the weight, blah, 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 blah. Shift it a little bit, move weight around if you need to shift that weight a little bit. ESC motor I put here. A lot of people put a plate up in here or put a plate around in there or up here on the rigs. I wouldn't mind everything right in the center. Try to keep that weight center, low, and built. What we have is a Traxxas Bandit, the VXL transmission, but I did swap over to the RPM transmission case. This is a black RPM transmission case. I also put in the hot racing aluminum diff cover. Locked it up with the diff cover. So basically we have a Traxxas Bandit Vxl transmission in a RPM transmission case with the hot racing metal diff covers. I also filled the diff with 5,000, or I'm sorry, 500,000 K Kraken silicone diff oil from Kraken RC, and installed MIP. It might be easier to see them this way. Installed some MIP Bandit type drive shafts. See, a lot of people use the Slash, or get the Slash drive shafts, and then when they swap out to Bandit arms in the back, the Slash drive shafts are too long, and they have to cut them down. MIP makes a specific set for the Bandit, and I think the one on-road car, newer on-road car, don't remember the name of it. Excuse me, I got the hiccups. In the same price, they're just already a little bit shorter, so you can get full movement, and you don't have to worry about modifying the rear end drive shafts from MIP or anybody, because the Bandit ones are the right setup, right length already. So from there, it's the rear end's much the same. You build it up with your whole rear end, and then you mount, get your tranny all done, put your motor in. I put my motor in after I had my tranny all done and built. Get your tranny all done and built, I'll put your motor in, whichever you do. Install that. It's easier to do it probably without the motor, as you see how I did. But if you want to run your wires inside, you do all that. Mount your transmission. It's got a white piece up underneath the tranny here that goes up underneath the transmission in the rear end, and it's he calls it an anti-squat pad or anti-squat plate. It's kind of like a firm, hard cardboard type material. Take up a little bit of that push and torque out of the transmission. I'm not exactly sure, but it helps squatting, I guess, or help stop squatting. It's an anti-squat plate. At any point, stock Traxxas Bandit then rear end just mounts right in. You put your with the RPM case, you have the hard to see in there, the RPM case. Let me get the light on too. This will help a little bit. The RPM tranny case down here on the A-arm side. See right in there, you can see it right up in there. You see that screw. The RPM cases have a replaceable toe-in plates on the transmission. Stock Slash tranny has a built-in 3-degree toe in. That's great for dirt racing. One of the biggest difference here in this Redshift and many of the other conversions, there's a couple of them out there, is this is set up for mid-motor. Typically on the Bandit and the two-wheel drive Slash and Jatto and those type of things, the transmission is flipped 180 degrees and the motor sets out the back. This design has you flip the transmission and motor around so the motor is in the middle of the wheels, therefore a mid-motor. Not a rear motor. It's not hanging out behind the rear wheels. It's shifted, and that shifts the weight forward and in the middle, hopefully to help keep that front end down and counteract that torque wanting to lift up. I haven't ran it yet. I got it all put together pretty much last night to this particular stage. It's still got some ways to go, but figure this is a good time to go through it. So it's a pretty stock Bandit Slash two-wheel drive rear end setup. I'm again going Bandit because it's got the shorter arms, and this brings the wheels in. Same thing with the front. These are Bandit arms, so the wheels are coming in a little bit better, or fit under the bodies a little bit better, less chance of rubbing on the corners at the end when you do need to turn, or you're kind of bouncing a little bit, what have you. And then the wheelie bar at the back. But pretty much it's a stock Traxxas two-wheel drive Slash, two-wheel drive Bandit front end, and rear end that you use in this rig, but you can just take the Traxxas unit and swap the tranny around. But I'm using the RPM tranny because it has this adjustable toes, and it goes to, they got a 3-degree toe and a 0-degree toe, and I've got the 0-degree toe in here. Because when you switch it around, you know, when you got it with reverse motor, your 3-degree toe is coming, so your rear wheels are, you know, inward. You know, got coming in towards the middle of the center chassis. So when you're racing, they're not trying to go like this. You know, it's trying to force to the center a little bit. And on dirt, that's, you know, a little bit important for grabbing grip and cutting corners at speed and stuff. When you flip that around, it actually gives you, if you did nothing but just took the tranny and flipped 180 degrees, you'd have rear toes. So your actually rear would be kicking out like this, actually. So as you're looking at, and your front end wheels would be kicked outward, coming this way. And it's going to cause the ass end to kind of get all over, because as one tire's biting, it's kicked out, and it's going to try to push it that way if you're losing traction on the other tire, and it causes a lot of problems. So switching that around and fixing that is one thing that needs to happen, and the easiest way of doing that is with the RPM tranny case, because it gives you adjustable toes. I'm looking at this. It's still, I'm going to have to put it on a setup. It still looks like I've got 3 degrees in there now, but I do have the 0-degree units. And you do have to flip things around. I put the left on the left. So I may actually still, what I might end up doing now is taking these 0-degree plates, because I do have them on reverse, because I reverse the unit. So this is actually the right plate, and this is actually the left plate. So I may reverse those 0-degree plates just to flip them around, because it does matter which side they're on, and see if that, I think, will square out my rear wheels. So that's one thing I learned in the build with this one, you know, because this is all new to me as far as no prep dragging and flipping this transmission around and setting it up on this mid-motor setup is a new concept. I haven't done that. Worked with these type of chassis before in that setup. So anyways, that's something to pay attention to. So what you may want to do if you're going this route and you have the RPM tranny, you may want to go ahead and mount your toe plates on the back of your tranny on the labeled side, right to right, left to left. Flip it around, install it, and then install your arms. This is the right arm, this is the left arm as normal. This is the right turnbuckle, left turnbuckle. When I pulled them off, I left them on the sides. So that was pretty much a given. But anyways, install that in place when you know, put it in. So pretty much you put your stock unit Traxxas running, can slide right in, your servo in here, you hook it up. Oh, that's something else I did do. I don't, as you can see, it's black in there, not white. The stock stock steering rack is white plastic. I actually have the hot racing steering servo steering rack system. I think what the heck they call it. Anyways, it's the hot racing steering rack for the servo stuff, and I have to do some adjustments and make some tweaks here to make the servo work a little bit better for the steering, because it's binding a little bit here at this point. So I got to make some adjustments, slip it out, blah blah blah. I'll take care of that here in a little bit. That's something else we'll be getting to. And then from there on back on the chassis, you've got the rear mount here, the aluminum pieces. This is to mount your rear end to a little bit, lock down to the rear shock tower. Shock tower screws into the top of it back here. And then this is also your wheelie bar mount at the bottom, as you can see here. Wheelie bar mounts here at the bottom. And then from here, you can see when I grabbed it earlier, flip down. You use 2 links, and I don't have the links yet. I still have to pick those up, and I'll probably swing by the hobby shop tomorrow on my way home. Actually, I could probably still go today, but anywho, I gotta drive pretty much by it on the way home, so I'll swing in there tomorrow and check to see what they got for links. But you basically take 2 slash links. I talked with Chuck a little earlier, and he said bandit links are definitely too short. He's pretty sure he used slash links, so I'm going to get slash links, and when I get those, whether it's tomorrow, I order them online, they get delivered, I'll go through that and let everybody know. But so I get 2 sets of links that go from here to the ends here, and this is, you use those slash links to set your wheelie bar adjustment, so it's got 2 pieces to lock it in there. Other than that, it's a pretty straightforward assembly. The chassis build took me a little bit to figure it out. Chuck's in the middle of moving, and his site crashed, so he had minimal information on his site. The directions were good. They could be better. I'm sure he knows that. I'm sure he'll be looking at working at them. But with that being said, there was a little bit of looking around and trying to figure things out here and there. Some of the picks were not as, they were clear picks, but wrong angles. Could have been a little bit better. But I trust that he's got to work his site out, get that up. He's just said that he's actually going to be spending time now that he's in his new domicile and setting up shop and getting things ready. He made a bunch of parts before he left, so if you need something, you should be able to still contact him through all your other various ways, whether that's chuckworksrc.com or on Facebook, and get a hold of him if you need something that way. If you want to make an order, he's in place and should be able to get that going for you. But yeah, so it was a little tricky, but the directions were pretty good. There were a few things I had to figure out, one of them being this here in the back. Of course, I haven't used this RPM transmission case, so I'm just getting back into RC after a break of a couple, 2, 4, actually 8 years. I was out of RC for a while. So I'm just getting back in, so I'm getting reacclimated to some of the newer stuff, some of the things that are around. But yeah, as I said earlier, Chuck's been doing chassis stuff for about 10, 12 years, and he's got 2,000-3,000 items sold, as I understand, between his chassis, somewhere in that area between 1,500 and 2,000 of the various chassis and then different parts and stuff throughout the years. So, he's not just a new guy in the neighborhood. He's been around, but he's small. He works usually in a local, tighter area. He's looking to expand a little bit. Got online. I found his stuff. Looks pretty good. The composite, I like it. I mean, this thing is, as he said, stiff. There is, let me try to get there is like no flex in this thing. I mean, it is solid. He said he's had a lot of people with his chassis crash hard, and they've survived quite well. One of the reasons why he goes with this composite setup over carbon fiber, and most understanding, I guess. It makes all of his own mount blocks, and it's pretty simple. You've got a flat plate, chassis plate, and 2 center support chassis rails, where they're cut out specifically for your different areas or your servos and stuff, and they're made to mount up over the fanny and hook up to the shock towers on the slash rear shock tower setup. The front setup is made to mount with just your bulkhead, and then like that, simple, and your steering bell crank. There we go. Your bell crank is set up the same as the stock slash setup. You do have to do a little shimming and adjusting, so you get proper clearance and set up. And I'm actually not too bad. I might trim it up and shim it up a little bit better yet when I flip back through it a little bit. Pretty simple though. You mount your pieces, these pieces, your side chassis plates to your bottom plate mounts, and there's these 2 mounts here and these 2 mounts here. There are 4 or 5, 3 or 4 of these bigger blocks. They're a milled block hollowed out in the center of this composite. There is one up front here in front of the servo. There is one back here, and then there's this block back here. There's 3 of them, I guess. My bad. I said 4 or 5. And then you've got 3 or 4 center tubes. The center tubes are set up to give, and the rails are set up, and this is described on its website, like a flatbed trailer frame setup. They've got a little tweak in the frame rails. They get a little wider in the middle and then get a little thinner again at the end. Or they get a little wider in the outside and a little thinner in the middle. And that tweak, as you're loading the trailer and putting weight on it and it's being transferred, we're talking full-size semi-trailers here, those tweaks handle the different torques and twists as you're going up and down the tweets. The same premise, the same theories, the same engineering setup works in his chassis, and he's got that built into here a little bit, where there's a little push out, and I think that's right. It pushes out a little bit farther to the center. This center post is a little wider than the front and back post. So the center post being a little wider than the front and back, it adds a little tweak tension into the chassis rails, which strengthens everything. So when you are putting this together, you want to assemble it, leave everything loose, no Loctite. There's no metal except for this piece back here in his chassis setup, except for what comes in the bolts. All the blocks, assembly blocks and parts are all the composite that Chuck uses at Chuckworks Chassis. Even the center rails, these are aluminum. These are his composite pieces. All well threaded. I didn't have anything stripped. Everything tightened up really well. Really well. The front end was a little bit of a tweak. I had to do a little tweaking and pushing and biting and fighting to get it to, not really fighting, but, you know, some good firm push as you're putting in screws to get everything tightened in and centered well. So when you're doing this, you want to assembling it. What I did is I put my center rails on, obviously, got them all snugged, and then I started with the front end, and you build the plate and the block, front block here. This front block has an F marked on it, so that goes to the front, so you know that. But this plate and block get assembled together, and then your bell crank sets up underneath there, and that's where you have to shim your bell crank with some 5mm shims, and the ones that come out of the Traxxas, the 5mm shims around the steering bell cranks, and being able to use a few others. I got some, what are they? Some 5mm shims here. I don't remember the brand right now, but they're real small, various number size shims, and I used some of those. So anyways, it took a little bit to push and tweak, and once I got that in, for the bell crank, these two bigger bell crank bolts, and these actually help lock the whole front end down and through the bell crank systems. That's why you want to make sure it's shimmed right, because you are going to put a little tension in there. And I actually had to adjust mine because I got them too tight, then it would tighten up my bell crank, so I need to do a little bit more shimming, and then I'll be able to get those tighter. But they're pretty tight, man. When you tighten this thing down, everything is going to be well fit. It's not going to be sloppy. You're going to have to leave things loose and work things a little bit to get them into place. I didn't have to re-drill a thing. Everything went into place like it should. Everything is fine. I've seen some people talk about having to re-drill. If you tighten everything down as you're putting it together and then get to a point, it might not line up. It might be off a little bit. That's because you gotta assemble, put everything into place, get all your screws into place, and not tight, just about snug. You want them even a little looser than snug, so you can shift it around. And then when you get it all assembled, you put the whole chassis system together. You put it on the flattest surface you can. I went out and got on some glass, nice flat glass. Put it on the glass and set it, and just put a little weight on everything. Moved it and made sure everything was nice and thin. And then I started, tightening up my side bolts here. Tightened up these blocks. And then I tightened up a couple of my bolts in here. Got a couple of these tightened up. And then once they were a little bit snug, I held it nice and snug by the deal, and then lifted it up, and then snugged up a little bit tighter to the bottom bolts, and then started doing the other ones, working my way back, held it nice and snug, put it back on thing, made sure it was good and flat before I went through and tightened up all my big blocks and got all that snugged up. And then I assembled the front end and put the front end in. So I had the whole the chassis assembled, less the wheelie bar, ready to accept the front end piece assembly. And once I did that, I put it on, didn't have the shock tower on. It was kind of a pain, so I had to slide it back up, put the shock tower on. So you should be able to pretty much slide it all together, shock tower included, probably even be able to leave the shocks on. I have the old front end built and just have these things loose, these bolts loose, and these bolts loose. I use two stainless steel bolts up here just because this piece didn't appear to be drilled out unless I have it installed upside down, and I may have, because it says to use the stock bolts for the Traxxas, which are countersunks, and I don't have countersunk holes. That's why I said this. I may have put this piece on upside down, not realizing it. So I'm going to flop it apart a little bit here, and I'll flip that over and take a look. And if I do have that upside down, I'll flip it over and put those in there. So those should actually flatter. But anyways, that was one of my learning curves in this, and you need to pay attention to that if you are building this, and I'll get into that later. There may be countersunk holes right at these two front, and if there are, make sure they are facing upward. On the short side, the block sits on one side, the countersunk holes will face the same side as the block front mounting block is on, just FYI. So anywho, from there, it was pretty much straightforward. Once I had everything built, I didn't quite tighten all the front end down because I had to put the front end on. And I did get most of the back end, but I did leave this a little bit loose and this back screw pot here a little loose, just so I could shift this around a little bit if I needed to. Put the transmission together next. On top of the hot racing bell crank, the hot racing diff housing, the RPM tranny case, I put fast steady ceramic bearings for a Bandit throughout. Now it gives you all the bearings you need for your transmission and your bell cranks. It doesn't include the bearings for the front wheels. I thought it did. I was mistaken. So I ordered the ceramic, fast steady ceramic wheel, the other side of the Bandit kit. So it comes with these wheel bearings and more bell cranks and a couple others for the transmission, I think. But that being said, I'll have extra ceramics, but that way I have a full ceramic bearing load from Fast Steady's bearings, and that's faststeadies.com. Oh, and I'm not sponsored, I'm not paid, I'm not getting anything. I bought these items, every one of them, with my hard-earned pennies. Nobody's sponsoring this, and I'm not getting paid to say what people think I should say. I'm telling you what I think from my experience on it. The build was straightforward, very simple. Directions could be better, and I'm sure Chuck is going to work on that and make them better. We talked today a little bit. He said that's going to be his focus, is getting the website straightened up. He's got plenty of parts to hold through and plenty of kits to hold through for a little bit. So he's going to get the website straightened up. And I'm assuming that also is going to include directions across the website as well as what comes with the kits. These are photocopied pages. They look good, but like I say, they're just a little hard to follow in some places. From there, you got these 4 little posts here. These are for your battery support, so it stops the battery from sliding back, as well as the center port, and then sliding side to side. You can put a couple types of trays or locking pieces in here to lock your battery down. I'm sure plenty of room if you need to add anything else. I don't know what else you would need on a No Preg Drag as far as electronics or stuff, but as you can see with mine, obviously I've got the short battery. In the next tray forward, I put my ESC. And the next tray forward, right behind the servo, is my receiver. Nice small receiver. So as far as that goes, I'll kind of step through what all I use. Obviously, the Traxxas Bandit Vxl was a donor kit. If you're going with RPMs, then different parts like RPM front wheels and stuff, you can get all that. If you want to get with Lunsford, I looked at maybe getting the Lunsford titanium will help lighten up some weight, but you can build everything without using pretty much one piece of Traxxas stuff with this kit. You can get Lunsford pieces for your links. These are stock Bandit, and I may get Lunsford just to lose that bit of weight. You can go RPM. I do have RPM front arms. I will be putting those on there. I do have RPM rear arms in my carts at one of the places. I'll be getting those. A few other things I'm looking at getting and adding into this is a zero degree kick front bulkhead to flatten the front A-arms. One of the back sides of the short course setup is the front A-arms. They're a lot of travel. They're made for short course where you're bouncing, and as you can see, they come backwards, and they do it like this. As you look down, as it comes up, you can see the tire moves backwards. That's because it's on an angle up front, and that angle, and the hinge pins are on an angle, so your 90-degree arc is 90 degrees of that angle. So when your tires come up, they move backwards. On a drag car, your tires should move up and down, but with no, reverse. It should be straight up and down. A 0-degree bulkhead, put that in there. It flips your your shocks up and down, your A-arms up, flat 90 degrees, parallel, and even with the surface all the way to the front. It straightens up your A-arm. It straightens up the front shocks, because when you're loading, those wheels coming backwards, like if you're loading, it's cutting, that wheel's cutting backwards, but that wheel's staying high, it's going to want to start turning because this wheel's giving you a shorter wheelbase now, and it's going to start drifting. And that is primarily caused by these A-arms sliding backwards. So I am looking at getting, I believe it's Drag Race Concepts 0-degree bulkhead. I'll get 2 of them, one for the other build too, which will probably require a little reconfiguration. I am also going to replace the stock fiberglass front piece. Actually, I won't need to. If I'm getting the Drag Race Concepts metal piece, that fiberglass piece will be nice and light and be more than sufficient, because the metal will hold this hinge pins from flopping around or getting pinched and buckled. So that's probably what I'll end up doing there. I bought some STRC hinge pins. They're too big to slide through the pieces in a couple areas. They go through the arm all right, but they don't slide through the turnbuckle part. So I'm either going to contact them or see if I got something different and see what's going on with there. Right now I'm running the stock Bandit front wheels, and they will be getting replaced with some purpose drag wheels. I've got the Hoosiers on this, so I'll likely get a set of Hoosiers to match the rear tires. And these are not belted rear tires. I do have to take them back apart and tape my tire and my foam. Tape your tire, Tim? What are you talking about? Back in the days of the HPI Baja 10 years ago, we found out tape your tires, tape your foams. It helps stop the expansion. 35, 40-pound car going 55, 60 miles an hour, those tires would expand something fierce, and especially the stock HPI tires. So we found really quick taping our tires, and then of course taping the foam, stopping that expansion using a good quality tape. We use Gorilla Tape, nothing but Gorilla Tape, because it stuck really well and it was strong and it lasted a long time. Even with water infiltration, it wouldn't fall apart. So I'll be taking these apart again and putting Gorilla Tape on the inside of the tires and around the foams for a couple laps to help stop any swelling and expansion. I haven't vented them yet. In rock crawling, a lot of people vent their tires, but I get away with I don't vent my tires because you're in so much water. It's a pain in the ass to keep tearing them apart. So I try to keep them sealed. But what I do is when I build them, I put zip strips or Velcro or something around the tire and squeeze it till just right, and I work with it a little bit. I may undo it and put it together 2 or 3 times before I get the right quote unquote feeling for pressure inside the tire, and then put it together and seal it out. When I've done that, I get really good, tire collapse on rock crawling, and it tightens up and does what it needs to do where it needs to do, and it's nice and firm and solid when it's out. I presume once I tape these, this is my theory and speculation, once I tape these tires inside and out, tape the belts in, tape the tires on the inside and tape the foams up, and then put them back together and introduce just the right amount of proper tire pressure and get them sealed out. They'll stay flat. They won't stretch much. They won't balloon much under high RPM use. So I think that's how I'm going to go forward with that. So basically, there's a few things I'll be changing or adding. Race servo, almost certainly I'll use this for testing and getting going, but I'm certainly putting in a high-end, fast, high-speed race servo into steering duty in both the rigs. Probably get the drag racing concepts, 0 degree front bulkhead, which I also have to buy the 0 degree shock tower. It's carbon fiber, so that will be nice and strong. So this is one of the problems. It's wiggly, it's soft, it flexes way too much. That's great in off course, short course, dirt, off road, but in drag racing, stiffness and firmness is key. So I'll be getting a different shock tower whether I don't go with the 0 degree front end or not. But I will be getting that front end set up. Bulkhead, I got them in the cart, just about ready to order. And I'll get those and the shock towers on the way. I'm also going to go ahead and get the 2 front bumpers, and I'll add a nice piece of foam on the front of that to help finish it out. So pretty much you got a stock Traxxas Slash, the 2-wheel drive variety, the non-brushless Slash. If you want to go out and buy a Slash to convert over, would be the kit you want. Gives you all the drive shafts, shocks, shock towers, parts, everything you need to convert this over, except for mounting posts and bodies. And body mounts actually would work off the Slash, and you could probably even use the body. With the Bandit, with the Slash, your A-arms are wider front and rear, so pay note of that. They may put the tires right at the edge of the body, very close, so you may end up wanting to go to Bandit front arms if you do use the Slash base. That's why I went ahead and went with the Bandit, because I knew I wanted to keep those arms in and keep it narrow. Especially for 1 or 2 of the bodies I'm running, and I would like to keep it a little bit narrower. The bodies I want to run that are on the way, and we'll go into that at a later date. This particular kit is close to being ready. Like I say, I need links back here. I'm gonna get that drag race concepts 0 degree bulkhead, the bumper and the shock tower, and reorient that. It'll get a race servo. It's going to get 2 Traxxas Slash links. So you use the Traxxas Slash steering links, I think it is. They are the longest links in Slash. And you use those steering links from these 2 points. And that's how you set your adjustment and depth of rise on your wheelie bar. You typically at about 3/4 of an inch, 1 1/4, somewhere in that, about 1 inch off the ground, give or take. At any point, go through the rest of the details on this unit. Traxxas Bandit, as I said, Chuckworks RC, Redshift chassis, stock wheels everywhere at this point except for the rear end here. Fast Eddy ceramic bearings throughout. When I got the other ones, I think they're probably sitting in the mailbox right now, and they'll get in. So they have Fast Eddy ceramic bearings throughout. They'll have a Reese RC servo right now. It's got the stock Traxxas servo. This is a Gen Ace 4600 50C pack, I think it is, that I'm going to use for testing and setting up. The Bandit Vxl transmission. There is a difference, I think, in the VXL transmission and the standard transmission. I may be wrong about that, but I seem to remember something about the gears being a little better quality in the VXL transmission. Something to think about or check into. So VXL Bandit transmission in RPM cases with 0-degree blocks, MIP drive shafts. Obviously, we have Proline 6-bolt lock bead lock rims and the Hoosier tires. I will be replacing the bead lock ring itself with a 12-bolt bead lock ring on that. Be getting Hoosier front tires, and probably I'll try to get F1 Pomona rims, but I don't know if I can get, or the F1 Pomonas, sorry, Proline F11 rims up front, but I don't know if they've got them in the thin enough version for the front because they're short course tires. So I may end up having to do something different for the front. I do have a set of RJ Speed O-ring wheels, but they're not legal for No Prep RC, so I'll be getting different wheels, stock wheels, probably again the Hoosiers up front and a rim to go with that. From there, in the motor, pretty much the only thing I haven't went over is the motor and ESC in this setup, which you can't see too much right now, but you might be able to see that M right there in the back. I went and decided to go with the McLaren Racing M Max Pro ESC at 160 amps, and on a wing and a prayer, guy selling a brand new motor on one of the forums because they're out of stock everywhere. The McLaren Racing 4.5 turn drag tuned motor. So we got a McLaren Racing ESC and motor combo here. So I'll be able to do all the data logging and everything else. I used XT60 ends on my cables for right now because I don't have any XT90. But when I get my higher end, I'm going to get a couple, like say 130, 150C. I see it even SMC, I think it is, makes 170C. I've got to wonder about those C ratings. Those are kind of crazy C ratings. But I'm going to look at one of those batteries and I'll go to XT90 connectors on both ends at that time of my jumper used here, and then the McLaren I'll just unsolder XT60 and put the XT90 on there at that point. So we got a little bit better power flow. So that's pretty much the deal. I haven't went over the wheelie bar yet, but it's pretty simple. 2 pieces of carbon with 3 simple things. You got to add your own wheels, and then of course the links. The links connect here to the aluminum milled piece and to these other holes above this bar here in the back. There's 2 holes above the center support bar, and that's it. It's a pretty simple build when it's set up. Sitting there and I get it all set up. I got to do a little shock tuning yet. She just wants to squat and sit, so I need to work on that. One thing I did do when you flip your arms around, actually these arms are flipped around. So the front is back, back is front. So I'm going to play around a little bit and see. But when you flip those, of course, you don't have shock holes in your front. So I had to end up drilling shock holes. So I drilled shock holes in here. And the last modification I made is obviously the shocks typically end up here. When you mount them here and you go to the stock shock locations with stock arms in normal place, your spring is going to rub the inside of your tire. And you can't get the shock mount in far enough. So when I did this, I had to make shock holes. So I measured, what was it, 16 millimeters, I think it was, out from the hinge pin. And that's where I put up my first hole. And then I went every 8 millimeters out to the outer hinge pin. There's like 4 holes in there. This allows me a little tuning to adjust it. I can now move my shock mount. As you see, I took it off the normal mount and moved it to this location on the shock tower. Give a little bit more angle to those rear shocks. A little bit more push down. Well, I guess not really more push down, maybe a little less push down because of the angle. So I will be doing some shock tuning, but now that I've actually got this set up, I might be able to move these back, but I'm going to check my toe blocks, do a little tweaking, check and see if I can move my arms back around the other way. After I switch my toe blocks, I'll just take them both off and swap them around and see if that whole setup gets rid of any little bit of toe. So I still think with this setup, it looks like I've got just a little bit of toe in on the back, which is okay, but if you can get your toe straight, much better. So I'm going to play with that a little bit, and then I'll get my shocks. Basically, you want your rear end to set level. When you push down and it comes back up, you want your ass end and your A-arms to be level with the chassis. Try to get a little better shot. You want them nice and level. You know, I don't want them hanging down. You preferably don't want them like that. You know, the more level it is, the more proper tuned on your shocks you are. You shouldn't get any major squat when you're taking off. You know, when you're taking off, this thing shouldn't be dropping down. It should be kind of lifting up. It should, you know, like this. And, you know, your front end may lift up. With a wheelie bar, hopefully it ain't lifting up like this because you're getting too high. If you can shift some weight forward, you want to shift some weight forward. You want to keep those wheels, front wheels, on the ground as much as possible. So you at least have some steering if you need to steer. Because if they're not on the ground, you're not steering anything. But when you're taking off, your unit should not, you know, squat down, you know, and drop down. Your suspension should be certain enough of your stock wheels. If anything, drop out. They unsquat. They unload. Because the torque and motor and everything else should be forcing forward, and hopefully that weight's pushing forward and not wanting to lift the front wheels. If it squats, that means the weight is getting shifted and the torque is getting shifted forward. It's going to lift your front wheels and you're losing your momentum forward in front wheel lift. So if you can get those adjusted so you're dirt modified oval, the midget racer, the Redshift drag chassis now, these are all Traxxas based conversion chassis. So your parts are very plentiful, relatively cheap. Damn near everybody in some town or another sells Traxxas. So gonna pretty much finish her up and move on out and stop back a little bit more. But yeah, I like the chassis. It's solid, it's rigid. I expect it to perform well. I'm going to be doing a few more things, and right now I'm pretty much going to be setting up. We may get a chance to run them once or twice more this year before it really starts getting too cold out. Up here in Michigan, it's barely tipping 70 today, and that's going to be a high for the week. So we ain't going to see too many more days to run. So chances are we won't be out till next year, so this really won't be getting anything until next year unless I find someplace indoors to do some testing over the winter time. But yeah, so Chuckworks RC Redshift chassis. This is outfitted with the VXL Bandit donor rig for the front end, the rear end, the transmission. McLaren ESC and motor combo. Right now, stock Servo. I'll be running this with my Nomadio React. And that's the last thing I didn't talk about. I got an old Nomadio React non-gyro system, so it's perfect for no prepping and dragging because they don't allow gyros. It's a 4-channel. It's a really, really fast radio. Even for 10 years ago, it's probably as fast or maybe still faster than some of the radios out there today, even the top of the line Futabas. This thing is really lightning quick on interaction between the receivers and transmitters. So I'll be using my React radio system. I got 4 or 5 receivers and 2 radios, and that'll be my dedicated drag radio system. So I'm not concerned about that. They work fucking up to 1,000 to 1,200, 1,400 feet no issues, no issues. So 132 ain't gonna be worried. So yeah, I'll be running this in my Nemadio React. And so the only thing that leaves me left that I haven't really jumped onto and figured out completely yet is body, and getting it done. I ordered one yesterday that's on the way. I talked to a guy about another one that I'm hoping to pick up and order today, and that one to get on the way. The first one I actually ordered is a pre-order, so I won't get it for a month or two, which is fine. And then body mounts, but I won't be getting into that until I get the 0-degree front end set up and a few of the other things in place and rocking and rolling. And by next spring, I'll have the Servo one there and go from there. But that's about it. Yeah, I'm really eager to run this chassis. It should handle quite well. A few more pieces, parts, and we'll get her going. And as I add these other parts, I'll make videos of those pieces so you can kind of see me tear down, get into, and reassemble and give you an idea. So that's it. Thanks for joining me and hanging out. If you're just coming in later on, thanks for checking it out. Take a moment, like, share, subscribe, and say whatever you want to in the comments. And I may or may not reply. Have a good day, and we'll see you guys later.